I actually love this chapter. It's one of my favorites. We're going to talk about advertising. Now, 10.1 gets into some advertising techniques. First of all, we're going to learn about something called the Yale model of attitudinal change. This was created by Carl Hovland and his associates who were working at Yale University. And during World War II, they were doing research into wartime propaganda. And at first, this was a model of what the factors are that influence persuasion or attitudinal change. How do we actually change people's minds? The thing to memorize for this is who said what to whom and how. And then the acronym you can remember is SCAMMY. SCAMMY. I don't know. SCAMMY feels appropriate for advertising. So the who is the source. So one of the most important factors influencing whether or not a message will be persuasive is the source. Is that source a source you view as credible? Is it a source that the audience perceives as trustworthy or likable? And then what they say is the content of their message. And you might think that the content was the most important thing, but you'd be wrong. It is one of the factors that's important. And through a series of, through research, Hovland and his associates found that, for one, the use of evidence and facts can be very compelling, particularly if you are dealing with certain types of audiences. He looked into the effectiveness of one-sided versus two-sided arguments, and people who were less intelligent responded better to the one-sided arguments, but people who were more intelligent responded better to two-sided arguments, or arguments that actually acknowledged the other side and usually endeavored to counter that other side. They also, of course, looked at the effectiveness of emotional and logical appeals, but all of those are part of the message, the what. And then to whom? The audience, who the audience is, I just alluded to that a little bit, who the audience is also is going to influence whether or not the message is going to be persuasive. In general, younger and less educated people are easier to persuade. Better educated, more intelligent evidence, they may be more difficult to persuade. They may require more evidence. The medium also matters. Here we're talking about different formats. So should I be putting this message out on TV, or should I be putting this message in the newspaper, on the radio? Should I be going to podcasters? You need to go to different formats and different platforms in order to get to the audience you're looking for. This should make you think about President Trump when he was running in 2024 went on Joe Rogan. He went on a number of kind of platforms that we don't necessarily associate with political candidates, but he did it to great effect in finding voters where they were. And then finally, did it work? The who says what to whom gets us to medium. And then what was the actual effect? It's one thing to change people's attitude. It's quite another to change their behavior. And that's really where the crossover comes for consumer psych. Because if I can actually get you to buy the product, then I have been quite successful. So that's your Yale model, not to be confused with another model. So if the Yale model tells us how to change people's minds, Lauterborn's 4 C's, this is what's called a marketing mix model. So this is intended to give advice to advertisers, to firms, to figure out how exactly what they should be including in their advertisements. So there used to be something called the 4 Ps, and you'll see built into my description of the 4 Cs how Lauterborn's 4 Cs is an update to that. But in general, we were moving from a more product-centered approach. The 4 Ps were all about the product to a more consumer-centered approach, which is what the 4 Cs were all about. First of all, Lauterborn says that your campaign needs to address your customers' wants and or needs. Instead of it being just about the product, there's your first P. Instead of making it about the product, do some solution selling. Figure out what your customer wants and needs and target the message that way. Instead of just focusing on the price, which was the old P, think about the full cost. It's not just the price of the product, but all the other costs that are involved. How much does your customer have to travel to get this? How much value or utility is this giving your customer? What ethical concerns are they dealing with? Are they going to be dealing with cognitive dissonance because they are purchasing in a way that's not in accordance with their values? Is there a cost to switching brands? Think about cell phone carriers do this really well. They will often offer to pay the cost of your old phone, to pay off your old phone, or to pay off your old contract. That goes way beyond just the price of the new phone. Instead of just thinking about promotion, which was one of the old Ps, Because promotion is a one-way street. Promotion is, here's my promo, here's my advertisement, here's this. Lauderborn said, no, we need to focus on communication. It needs to be a two-way street. We're not just telling the customer why they should get our products. We're listening to the customer. If you've ever read Google reviews, which I love to do, I love when the owner is responding to every Google review. Thank you so much for that. I also love when owners read someone for filth and they're like, this person didn't even stay here, or that's not what really happened. Either way, you've got to have communication. It needs to be a two-way street, and they need to know that you're listening. And then finally, the old P was place. But Lauderborn said, no, it's about convenience. We need to make this product easy and accessible for the customer. It's not just a matter of selling online, although selling online does really, the fact that we now can sell online. And in fact, like, it's funny even to talk about advertising, because advertising used to be so different. Like, it really used to be that you would have to see an ad on television and then remember, okay, I want that product. That's the product I want. By the time I get to the store, it was like a fundamentally different model. Now I can see an ad on the TikTok shop and have purchased it 30 seconds later. Or I can see an ad on TV and my Amazon Smart TV gives me a link to buy it right there on the spot. So it's not just about online shopping. There's more to convenience. It's about opening hours. How long are you staying open? What delivery options are you offering? What effort is it requiring them to get the product? How convenient can you make it? Now, the last part of 10.1 is an example study by a woman named Andrea Ciceri. This example study, it's looking at the effectiveness of digital and print ads. That's a little misleading because you've got print ads, then you also have digital ads on a tablet and digital ads on a computer. What's kind of unique about this study is that it uses biometric techniques. Ciceri defines neuromarketing, this new branch of marketing, where you are looking at neural and biometric technologies. Specifically, you're going to see that she uses an EEG, and she also uses eye tracking technology. So rather than relying on self-reports, which we know have their issues, we're going to actually look at what's going on in people's brains in order to figure out how they're responding to ads. She starts in the background with a mention of something called banner blindness. This was something that had already been identified. People have a tendency to avoid looking at banner ads when they're viewing websites. Now, this is a study from 2020, so it's fairly recent, but even since then, the kind of like way ads appear on computers has changed. But it used to be that you had those banners, that pop up and they're massive and you have to scroll past them. And there also used to be what was called skyscraper banners on the right-hand side. But generally, she was looking at the effectiveness of different types of media, advertising in different types of media. All of them were newspapers. So like I just said, she created a mock newspaper with 25 real advertisements, and the people either read that newspaper on a tablet or on a computer or on actual paper. So she wanted to recruit people who actually read newspapers. So she recruited 72 habitual newspaper readers. We had an even gender split there. You can see their ages, and they were all right-handed. The sample was stratified to reflect Italian society, but specifically targeting newspaper readers. It was independent measures design. So like I said, each of the participants read the newspaper in one of three mediums. And then data was collected in two ways. There was eye tracking technology used to measure fixation time. Remember, you should be associating fixation time with a couple of things. Remember that Pavicic looked at fixation time on menus and how people and tracked people's eyes and the way that they progress through menus and how eye magnets can change that. But also just last chapter, Adelaide used eye tracking technology and looking at the fixation time in order to study why people select the central item on a shelf. But they also used an EEG. You can see there, we talked about EEGs with Dement and Kleitman, and that was measuring activity in the cortex, that's cortical, and specifically they were measuring frustration. So they read the newspaper at their own pace. After they finished reading, they were given a 1-hour distraction task. Ciceri doesn't say what that task was, but then at the end of that hour, they did a memory recognition task. So they were shown 50 ads, and 25 of them were the ones that they had actually seen while they were reading the paper, and they were just asked to identify which one they had seen before. We love when the results are straightforward, and these definitely are. So for all three of those DVs, for fixation time, time spent looking at the ads themselves, memory for the ads in that recall test, and frustration, it was highest on the tablet and lowest on the website for all three. So The conclusion was that the negative emotions of frustration that were engendered by the tablet in combination with the greater fixation time is contributing positively to memory for ads. She does some speculating as to why their frustration was highest for tablets, for the tablet, seeing the ads on the tablet. And there was some suggestion that people are used to seeing ads on websites, and they are, because of banner blindness, they're actually really good at ignoring them. So you're less likely to get frustrated because you're better at ignoring them. Whereas you don't expect to see them on your tablet. Just so you can see, I wanted you to take a look at it. As long as you memorize everything is higher in the tablet and everything is lowest in the web, that is probably good enough. But I wanted you to look at the significant differences. So we see that there is a significant difference between the tablet and the website. We see that there's significant difference for fixation time between the web and the printed version. We see that there is not a significant difference between the print and the tablet. And that also holds true for memory performance. In fact, in memory performance, the only significant difference is between the web and the tablet. Web and print is not significantly different, and print and tablet is not significantly different. So the only place where we see significant differences amongst all three of the dependent measures is with the EEG. You don't need to memorize all that, but I do want you to look at it and be familiar with kind of how we read that. Generally, just remember, web and tablet were significantly different, and tablet was higher for all three of those dependent measures. If we get into 10.2, obviously this one also includes our key study, Snyder and DeBono, and how people's personality, specifically self-monitoring, might affect their reactions to different types of ads. But that has its own video. We're going to talk about product placement. Generally, product placement is believed to work in one of two ways. It can be that if you've seen the product, if you're exposed to the product, that causes you to have an increased positive feeling. And in this case, it works even if you're not aware that you were exposed. That's kind of the subliminal messages idea of product placement. Product placement can also act as a reminder. So the most recent placement could be just reminding you of the product you've already been exposed to. So Audie and Lewis did a study about this with children. So they wanted to investigate the effects of product placement on children's choices, and separately or relatedly, whether the age of the child influenced the effect. So they chose two age groups. The 6 to 7 age group was called limited processors because younger children like that are more limited in their processing. And then the 11 and 12 age group were called the cued processors because they were more advanced in their processing, and they should presumably be able to remember, although still needing some cues. The procedure was pretty straightforward. The children were either shown the scene from Home Alone where Kevin and the whole family eat pizza and prominently drink Pepsi. It's named and it's sitting there in the middle of the table. Or they were shown, if they were in the control group, they were shown a different scene where Kevin eats mac and cheese and drinks milk. The DV was an implicit test. So they actually made a choice. They showed them the film clip, and then they brought them in, and then they said, we're going to interview you, but first go ahead and grab a drink. And then there were two small cans of Coke and 2 small cans of Pepsi, and the kids made a choice. And then after they'd made their choice, they were asked questions about what they remembered about the film, including some pretty specific prompts to help them remember the brand of the drink if they didn't already mention that. And they were asked, of course, if they had seen the film before, because Audie and Lewis also hypothesized that having seen the film before would also influence whether or not they remembered it. The results are really interesting. So 62% of the children in the experimental group, the ones that saw the Pepsi scene, chose Pepsi, compared to only 42% of the control group. You might be like, well, 62 doesn't seem like a lot. Also, you should be asking yourself, well, how do we know they wouldn't have chosen Pepsi to begin with? Well, what we do know about the United Kingdom is that Pepsi only is about 25% of the market share. 75% of the colas bought are Coke. So 62% of children choosing that when only 25% of the market is buying Pepsi, that does seem fairly significant. But what was the most interesting to me was they looked to see was recall a mediating factor. Because remember, here's the prompts, by the way. These were the exact questions that they were supposed to ask in order that they were supposed to ask the kids if the kids had not already immediately cited Pepsi when they were asked about the drink. But it didn't matter whether they remembered seeing Pepsi or not. That was not a mediating factor on their choice. You would expect the people who mentioned seeing Pepsi or mentioned seeing Pepsi with fewer prompts, you would expect them to be more likely to pick Pepsi, but that wasn't the case, which shows us that product placement really does sometimes work by implicit processes. We're not even aware. We don't actually remember Pepsi very easily. We're not aware, but we still chose Pepsi. There was no difference in recall between the two age groups. The younger kids did require more prompts, but there was no difference. It wasn't like the older kids were appreciably more likely to remember Pepsi. They found a negative correlation that we would expect between the previous time seeing the film and the number of prompts needed. The more times you had seen the film, the less prompts you were needed. But what they found was evidence for a reminder effect. And here we had to break out between the kids who had seen the film before and the kids who had never seen it. So kids who had already seen Home Alone were more likely to choose Pepsi if they were in the experimental Pepsi scene. But when we took kids who had never seen the movie before, they were not any more likely to choose Pepsi, even if they saw the Pepsi scene. The mere exposure, the one exposure to Pepsi, did not work significantly on them. So what we end up getting is we go from the original hypothesis, which I'll talk about in a sec, to the conclusion from the results basically is that you need to have seen the film, then you have an implicit memory of brand from the film, and then the most recent exposure you get, which in this case for them was seeing the movie, primes you to remember that, and then you make your choice. It's not cognitive ability or age, which they hypothesized would play a role, and it's not even explicit memory, which they thought would play a role. Finally, we're going to talk about brand awareness and recognition. That's 10.3. Generally, brand recognition is all about classical conditioning. You get paired. That's why when we see the golden arches, we think of McDonald's. We have seen the arches and then seen McDonald's products enough times that those are paired for us. So researchers like to study brand awareness. Have you heard of it? But also, can you recognize it? And Fisher did that with, again, kids. So most of the research in children had not been on these very young children. So Fisher selected a sample of kids aged 3 to 6. It was U.S. school children, opportunity, blah, blah, blah. One problem with children who are age 3 to 6 is they can't read. So that limits a lot of the things that you can do with them. But Fisher followed some previous research and created this game, this logo recognition game. So the way it worked was the kids were given 22 cards that had logos on them. So these are, I think, 21 here. There was one I couldn't find. So they had 22 logos on cards, and then their job was to place those cards onto a game board. And the game board had categories. So the category was camera, TV, computer, car, cigarette, cereal, athletic shoe, Pepsi, cola, pizza, burgers, and Mickey Mouse. That was the category. So they would take these cards and they would place them on one of the categories to see if they could do it effectively, to see if they were actually recognizing these brand logos. That was the goal. There were 10 children's brands. You can see them here, 5 cigarette brands, or not different brands, but different images associated with cigarettes, and then some adult brands. And you can see here, this was the children's recognition rate. You need to see that they had very high recognition rate for children's brands. The highest was at the Disney Channel, almost 92, ranging down to Cheerios. They were at 25. But they also had pretty good recognition for adult brands. The highest adult brand recognition was for Chevrolet at 54. But then most concerningly, there was one cigarette brand image that more than half of the kids recognized as a cigarette. Now, crucially, Old Joe, where's Old Joe? Here's Old Joe. No, this is the Marlboro Man. But crucially, in none of these is the person smoking. There's no clue that this is the Marlboro logo or that this camel is associated with the, with smoking, or that this new version of the camel is associated with smoking. In all of these, they're not smoking. And yet kids, 51% of kids with ages 3 to 6 were like, yep, that's a cigarette ad. So they do know what's being marketed and they can recognize that. For your results, I just went over most of that for you. Recognition did increase with age for all the types of brands. You can see that the 6-year-olds were better able to recognize the children's brands, the cigarette brands, and the adult brands. And then there was a positive correlation between the hours of TV they spent watching, because that was something that they had asked the parents, and whether or not they could recognize the logos. But here's the one that is probably most concerning. If we look at 3-year-olds, they're way more likely to recognize the Disney Channel than Old Joe the Camel. But boy, look at those 6-year-olds. Those 6-year-olds are equally likely to recognize the Disney Channel and Old Joe the Camel as a cigarette brand. So this is disconcerting because we can say conclusively and connecting to application, children are consumers in training. So if they're already recognizing cigarette brands, there's a danger of the kind of environmental advertising. Not that they're not directly advertising to children, obviously, if you ask the tobacco companies, but the kids are seeing it. The other example study was by Coley. This is interesting because it's really just like a lit review. He's really just like summarizing a lot of research that's been done into slogans. And just a review of previous articles. And then he came up with this guidelines for effective slogans. So he says slogans have 2 functions. They can enhance your brand awareness and help to differentiate your brand from other products. And they can also affect your brand image. So awareness is, do they know your brand at all? And then like brand image is, do they have a positive image of your brand? So, I give you this acronym for it, JL Porch. Now, jingles are not always better. He talks about a couple of examples, but jingles might be particularly effective if you're like a small company who's only doing like an audio ad. A lot of the jingles that we talked about in class are like for local companies. Crucially, you need to link the slogan to the brand. Put the name in the slogan. He looks at a huge amount of research that suggests that people often misidentify slogans, that they know the slogan but think of the wrong brand, which is definitely not doing the job. This needs to be a brand positioning tool. That gets back to that brand. We talked about not just brand awareness, but brand image. So have a slogan that is like painting your brand in a particular way that you want them to. It's important to get them right at the outset, that it is crucial to have a slogan just as you are launching. Because for one, you're missing out on, like, that's when the most people are like forming their view of your brand. And that establishes right away that you can use it to prime responses to your brand. Like if you mention the sweetness of your product or something like that, people will link that to your brand. Obviously, you need to repeat it, different ads, different formats. It should end with or include your slogan. And it's good to be creative. That especially if you have syntactic complexity. So like, this is the one people always think of, the NyQuil slogan. It is. Syntactic is like sentence structure. It's pretty complex. It can also be good to have semantic or meaning complexity, to have puns, to have figurative language. It's found that can actually, because it causes people to like process it more deeply, they have to think harder about it, they may remember it better. So creativity is good. And then keep your eye on the horizon. Make sure that you have an idea of where your brand is going. Don't create a slogan that's going to limit your growth. The example I always give is if your first product is shoes that are made out of plastic water bottles, and then your slogan is sustainable shoes, but then in the future, you're also making purses and you're making other products, but you're still stuck with a slogan that says sustainable shoes, then you're going to have to update your slogan. And you can change your slogan. Lots of like companies do. They change their slogan and they may kind of change their logo a little bit. They rarely are going to change their name. But like from the very beginning, if you think about keeping your eye on the horizon, where's your company going? And you make a slogan that allows for growth, that's beneficial. So these first 3 slogans are good brand positioning tools. We Try Harder is Avis Car Rental. So like they're positioning themselves as better than their competitors. Nothing Comes Closer to Home is Folgers Coffee. So it's kind of like positioning it as like, oh, this is like part of your kitchen, part of your home. The Headache Expert is Excedrin. I had to Google that. So these are like good as brand positioning tools, but none of them have the name of the product in them. So if I misremember the Headache Expert as Advil and then I go and buy Advil, mission not accomplished. The next 3 are pretty good are good for that like linking and including the name of the product in your slogan. And then the complexity there at the bottom.